I guess you have to experiment a little bit.
Yeah. I think there's also probably a market set wherever you live, that it's easier to just kind of fit into that, even if it's the boring answer. That if you're just kind of emulating what other people are doing in terms of pricing, it's going to be like when, for instance, for weddings, somebody's looking for a wedding photographer, they probably have like 10 tabs open. And if all of a sudden you are way below or way above everything else that they're looking at, that might rule you out. But if you're kind of within the same pricing model as everyone else, I feel like you kinda stay in it for that, and again, it's like the scary middle thing, but overall, it's worked out pretty well for me.
So basically, would you say like, you know, research your competition in your area and then just figure out where the mid ground is and just position yourself slap bang in there?
Yeah, and then if you're younger in the industry, I would say that you have a lot more time to do all the correct things that all of us know that we should be doing. Like we should be blogging everything. We should be really targeting like pretty much anything that any couple would be searching for when they first get engaged. I would like to be on like in front of every single search. I would like to be making long form videos about all of that as well. So if they're searching, that YouTube video pops up for their search. I would like to be there, but because I run a pretty busy business, it's kind of hard for me to do all of that all the time. I could outsource it and get it done, but I feel like I'm not the only one that gets established and then you stop kind of focusing on the basics of your business. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for there to focus your marketing efforts on that is just time that you have to spend as a newer business that a established business might not be able to.
I think that's actually one of the major problems for any solopreneur, startup. Not only a photographer, but actually, this is true for just about any business that's like a one person business to start with. Is that when you don't have a lot of clients or you don't have a lot of business, you spend a lot of time marketing, which is a good thing
Yeah.
because that's the way you get clients. But then the minute you actually get the work in, you're going to have to go out and do the work, which then takes you away from doing the marketing, and so it seems like, it's a constant up and down, like, peaks and troughs. And before you know it, you've done all the work. Now you haven't got any more clients. So now you have to sit back down and do a lot of marketing in order to get more clients, in which case you then have to go back out and do the work and your marketing efforts
Yeah.
stall. And, how do you get around that?
Um, I think you just kind of come up with some bases that you know that like I'm always going to focus on SEO, or once a year I'm going to make a wedding planning guide for my local area. I'm going to go to venues and film it. I think by doing like committing some level of it makes you not get so lazy that you stop doing all of it, which I think is potentially a problem. There's also, I guess, the other part of this is that if for weddings specifically, if you become a preferred vendor at like 10 different venues, there's a pretty good chance that that's going to fill like half of your season, maybe even more every single year. And you're not really going to have to do that much, that you just get inquiries and you just convert them. So I think there's also an element of that as well that not only am I not doing the things that I know I should be doing, but also I'm getting leads that would have never even done that Google search to begin with as well. So I'm not taking anyone out of that pool potentially. So there is still lots of work out there, I think, for people just getting started.
I think that's one of the biggest worries, like, that I hear, especially, let's say in the headshot game, or, I don't shoot weddings personally, but never say never. I might do one day. Um, that it's one of the things that was, oh, yeah, that market is saturated. There isn't any space for anybody else. Um, but then the wedding market is saturated everywhere, I guess. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
think of a place where I've heard people say, "Well, there are no wedding photographers in Wales." You know,
There's a lot, and they're all
but
doing photo video now.
exactly right. So, so saturation or market saturation isn't really a good enough reason not to start doing something, I don't think.
Yeah. No, and, like, I would say market saturation is, not necessarily a negative thing. It means that there is a market, that you're not gonna
Yeah.
put all this effort and create, like, a business that no one is ever gonna hire. It's, like, proof that every single weekend that these businesses are getting hired, so I would rather compete in that market than compete in a mystery market that, maybe doesn't yet have a price set and maybe doesn't actually have real customers as well.
It's also, I mean, differentiation is, I can't talk today. Differentiation, that's what I'm trying to say. Although that's generally a good idea because obviously you want to be slightly different from your competition, but I think if you take it too far, you can very easily sort of differentiate yourself out of the market that you're trying to attract.
Yeah, and I think it's also location dependent as well, that if you're in a New York City or a London, there is gonna be that exact, hopefully, if you're creating something that's unique within reason, there's probably gonna be someone that really is attractive to that business, but if you're in a small town and you're doing something that's really specific, I'll take, Jackson Grant as an example. He's a wedding photographer from New Zealand, and he shoots with a lot of fisheye. His colors are very, 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 very vibrant, like the most vibrant of any wedding photographer I know, and his work is amazing. But he has a very specific type of couple that's gonna hire him, and if he lived in a rural area and maybe wasn't into doing destination weddings, it's going to be very hard to create that business in that small town. Whereas in a larger town and being open to air travel kind of makes that business work. But yeah, it's I would say important to know the bounds of where you live and also where you would want to would you'd want your business to exist as well. The struggle with I guess some of us is that you begin and my first like 5 or 6 paying jobs, I was working for a contractor, so I'd go and I would just photograph his kitchens for him. So he would finish a kitchen job and I would go take photos of that kitchen. And pretty quickly my entire portfolio was all kitchens. And it was very easy to like get that work. I could have worked for all of his buddies. I could have done an entire business just doing kind of like essentially real estate photography, but for the contractors. And I could have done that, but I didn't really, my heart really wasn't into that. So you kind of have to resist that a little bit and put yourself back on course as well.
I had exactly the same experience with commercial buildings. So for quite some time, I started with one client shooting um, commercial distribution centers, big warehouses, basically.
Yeah.
Um, and initially, I actually thought it was fun. It was like, I shot them.
Make money.
Well, yeah, I was making money. That was fun. But it's
Yeah.
also actually the thing about these distribution centers is they're huge. They're humongous. I mean, you can put a couple of jumbo jets inside of them.
Yeah.
And of course, I would get to shoot them at the point just before handover from the construction company to the actual client. So there's nothing inside, no products, no nothing. So there were empty shells for the most part. And it was kind of interesting to be in huge, humongous buildings like that. They were brand new, super smooth concrete. I'm not saying I never took a skateboard, no, but
Yeah.
as you do. But
Sounds fun.
it's super fun. Yeah, they wanted me to fly drones, and it was super fun, a fun thing to do. And also, it was photographically, it was actually a challenge to make these predominantly blue shoe boxes look somewhat interesting
Yeah.
because they're not beautiful buildings. They're just commercial utilitarian boxes. So I found that I remember I kept getting like, they would ask me like, okay, well, what do you need? I'm like, oh, I need to be there at like, 4:45 in the morning. Why? Well, because that's when the sun's where, or like half an hour after that, the sun is going to be where I needed to be to photograph this thing. It was just like, just putting in that little bit of extra effort, to get a decent result, paid off. And I could have done this literally, all day long.
Yeah.
But there's a point where you think like, well, okay, that's practically the same blue shoebox that I shot last week,
Yeah.
you know, and it was because it was the same construction company. So it's literally
Yeah.
the same thing.
Literally the same setup. Yeah. And I also feel like you kind of that yeah, you could be established in that, but as you start to raise your prices, there's a pretty good chance that they're gonna find another person
Yeah,
that can
absolutely.
shoot the same blue shoebox. So you're gonna get, potentially, um, you're gonna scale out of that job pretty quickly. So it's, important, I think, to move either for your heart and what you desire or for, seeing that coming, from a business side of you.
How did you first get involved in shooting weddings? Like, how did that start for you?
So I went on Google and I typed in what kind of photographers make the most money. And that's actually the story. I was a concert photographer before that. I was doing a lot of shoots. It was a lot of fun. I shot all my friends' bands. It was like during the MySpace emo boom. So I was shooting probably 3 or 4 concerts a night, or not a night, per week in Toronto, and it was awesome.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed that clip, then press here for the full episode in glorious Technicolor. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe.